Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first 117. We got a whole new segment that we're bringing to you guys, and that is the music Pantheon. It could be heavy metal, it could be, well, in Andre's case, nothing, or in any other form of music that we listen to. We could pretty much rate them, rank them, and see where they fall to. Whether or not they're worthy of being in the music Pantheon, being in the Hall of the Immortals, or whether they're worth to die in a fiery chasm. Basically, we're gonna give our opinions on music, and if you don't like them, fine. If you do like them, cool. We don't give a shit. Agree to disagree, right? Anyway, today we're gonna open it up with one of the biggest albums in the history of music, and it is the most selling heavy metal album of all time, and really at the end of the day, it's also very controversial for when it came out. I'm talking about Metallica's Black Album. Of course, if anyone has ever listened to the Black Album, they know very well what this album entails. It has so many classic Metallica tracks on it, one right after the other, hit after hit, and it also stirred up a shit ton of controversy. But before I dive in track to track, let me give you a little background on this SOB right here. You see, back in the day, around like 1988-ish time, Metallica was killing it on tour. They were doing the And Justice for All tour, date after date, night after night, tour after tour, well, set after set, and we're just crushing city upon city. Unfortunately, there was one little detraction that was coming up, and that was, well, the production of the album. And Justice for All, if you've ever listened to it, does kind of have a couple of disparaging things. For one, the drums are extremely loud. Secondly, the bass is all but extinct on the entire record. And pretty much rumor has debated on whether or not this was a haze or a little bit of a dig on Jason because he was the brand new bassist at the time for Metallica, and they just decided to fuck with him and turn the bass all the way down on the album. Nonetheless, though, as the tour ended, a producer by the name of Bob Rock approached Metallica and said, "What you guys do live," which is what Metallica's known for, is having one of the best live shows, period. He basically said, "What you do live, you haven't captured on an album yet." Which of course takes balls to say to Metallica at this time, who are at this point the kings of heavy metal, at least in the underground. Now also, a little bit of background too, Metallica had some mainstream success by this time, as they had put out a music video for One off of And Justice for All, but they had no other real mainstream success or appeal because most record labels were like, no, get that the fuck away from me. The fact that Elektra even had them on their label is pretty fucking crazy to begin with. But they kind of knew that there was money to be found in the thrash metal, heavy metal world. With that being said though, Bob Rock and the boys themselves decided to go into the studio and cut this sumbitch. However though, it started a little auspiciously. For the most part, Metallica didn't even bother to fancy an idea of working with Bob Rock, and they pretty much said go fuck yourself for a good few months, maybe almost a year up to that point. Eventually though, they started taking the advice, they started taking the lessons, and they started to take their time with the album. And they were listening, they were changing, they were honing their skill into something that was fierce, dangerous, sound-piercing. That is what they got in this album right here. So you might be asking, what's the controversy of this? For some of you who weren't around in the 1980s, like me, you probably don't really remember how different this album truly sounds from the Metallica forefront. For the most part, well, they were just a thrash band, but they were the king of the thrash bands. A thrash band that no one could truly touch. They were here, everybody else was right here. So you can, needless to say, they were the kings in the heavy metal underground. When they put out this guy, all that changed. Immediately, the fans who had loved Metallica, breathed Metallica, sweat Metallica, probably even shat Metallica, they immediately called betrayal on this. From Nothing Else Matters being the first major thing that pissed them off, to hell, even Enter Sandman pissing them off. Needless to say, well, There was a lot of hatred for this album, just as much as there was a lot of love for it. But with that being said, we've given you the background, we've painted the picture for you. Now it's time to go track by track, break this sumbitch down, and see just how badass, or just how much of a sellout, possibly, this album could be. Opening up this sumbitch right here is none other than Enter Sandman, probably the most overplayed song in the history of heavy metal, but it is overplayed for a reason. It was a smash hit when it was released, the single that broke the singles of heavy metal. Beforehand, you did have some really good anthems. You had Run to the Hills, you had Ace of Spades, but when Enter Sandman came out, the whole world was like, whoa, what the fuck? All you gotta do is go to a hockey game, or a football game, and hell, you could probably go to even a basketball game and a fucking baseball game and you might actually hear the damn song. That or Welcome to the Jungle. Anyway, point is, it was super overplayed, but for a reason. The song opens up with a nasty little riff that gets you going, thinking like, oh boy, shit's about to go down. And then the drums kick in, and then the riff. And the first thing you'll notice is that Metallica is ditching thrash, and this is where the controversy comes in of this entire album, because instead of thrash, they decide to go with groove-oriented riffs, which they would continue to do for the rest of their career. This pissed off more than their fair share of loyal supporters back in the day. Some, though, did embrace the change. There'll be some other ones we'll get to in a minute, though, that they may have had a hard time embracing a little bit further on. But Enter Sandman started it all off, and all I have to say, though, is that it's a damn good song. There's not much else I could say about it that hasn't already been said about Enter Sandman. The riff is great, the solo is great, the content's great. If you know Metallica, you've most likely heard it. If you don't know Metallica, then you've probably still heard it as well. Either way, Enter Sandman, kick-ass song, on to number 2. Number 2 on the list for Metallica in the Black Album is none other than Sad But True, which is an interesting song. You can say whether or not you're being led by the nose by a puppeteer in life, or whether or not you let drugs rule your life, or alcoholism, or what have you. It's a song that kind of leaves a vagueness to what exactly is running your life, but you yourself are not running your life. Interesting little commentary put in there. Sad But True, at the end of the day, is another one of those groove-laden, heavy songs that comes into you immediately with a riff and with the drums pounding away, just like Enter Sandman. Once again, an immediate hit when it came out. Nonetheless, it absolutely kicked ass and took names when it showed up. Number 3 on the Black Album is probably the fastest song. So for you thrash metal heads out there, this is the song for you. There's one other thrash song in there, so Metallica didn't completely abandon thrash, they just didn't make it the entire album. The number 3 track that does this is Holier Than Thou. Many people debated on whether or not this was going to be the single when the album was coming out, but it wound up not being the case because, well, times were changing. Mainstream success was definitely asking for something different, and Bob Rock was looking to try and make the band mainstream worthy. Nonetheless, though, Holier Than Thou kicks it into high gear and shows that when Metallica still wants to be thrash, they can be fucking thrash. The immediate hit of the riff, drums, bass, it's all there at the very beginning, and it continues and never stops through the entire track. In short, you have to listen to this song if you're a thrash metalhead. If not, then you're pretty much missing out. Number 4. This is where the controversy will start kicking in for some people. This one is a dark, ominous ballad, kind of in the same vein as Fade to Black from Ride the Lightning, and that is The Unforgiven, which would have 2 sequels that would come out later on down the line. The Unforgiven begins with a trumpet sound, and you're probably thinking, a trumpet? Yes, a trumpet. It kicks in, And then you would hear the smack of the snare drum, and then the acoustic guitar leads us into the ominous tone for the rest of the song. The dark ballad that it is tells you about life, just crushing, painful existence in life where you have no freedom. You basically are just a slave to what everybody else shows, and how you are just completely unforgiven for living your life the way you do not want to. It's depressing, I will say that, but at the same time though, it is a powerful song, a song that truly shows the solo ability of Kirk Hammett. If you didn't believe that this guy could kick ass and take names, you certainly would believe it during this song. Nonetheless though, James would have the dark, ominous tone, which, by the way, by this point you've probably noticed, James decides to take a more operatic approach to his vocals instead of just shouting into a microphone like he did the first 3 albums. Major reason why is that because he threw his voice out when he started recording for this album, and he had to go to a voice teacher and actually learn how to properly sing during this time period. So you'll probably notice this by this point, if you haven't already. But nonetheless though, Unforgiven, whether you like the slower pace to it, or you love it, or you hate it, or you at this point are throwing this album into a stump grinder, either way though, I recommend you listen to The Unforgiven, and you'll probably hear me say that a few more times as we go down the line. Number 5 is another interesting intro. This time around, instead of opening it up with a trumpet, you hear a very Arabic opening, with the sitar kicking in, and you hear these little chimes of almost a charm in the background. This leads us into the drum-laden intro of Wherever I May Roam, a song that is basically a sleeper hit off of the album, and deservedly so. It really fit the band at this time because if there was any band that toured incessantly, it was Metallica. Now, of course, that was by necessity too because, well, back then, if you weren't getting on MTV and you were not getting too much radio airplay, which Metallica up to this point was not, with the exception of one being the only music video that they had out there, they weren't really seen on the mainstream media all that much. So for the most part, you had to tour and tour and tour and tour some more in order to get the people to buy your shit. So that understandably fits Wherever I May Roam and the band at this time. And also, Metallica would go on for the next 2.5 years touring for the album. So I like the song. It fits them perfectly. It's a great sleeper hit. Check it out. Don't Tread on Me. Now this is a song that, by definition, it looks like filler and sounds like filler, but it's actually not filler, believe it or not. It's actually got a really cool beat to it. It opens up with the drums, and it's got this, again, another groove-laden song that keeps you coming back to it. Like, you can hear it in your head, and it'll get stuck in there for days in and days out, thinking like, damn, that song actually left an impact on me, and that's supposed to be filler on this album. Showing just how strong this album truly is. Don't Tread on Me is a song that's basically about being prepared to fight because that's the only way to protect peace in the homeland of the United States, truly, at the end of the day. Hence why Don't Tread on Me fits it. Also, by this time, it was still a very conservative landscape across the board in America because even though this was the 90s, we were just coming out of the Reagan era and Bush was president. Not Bush Jr., I'm talking about the original George Bush. There was still a very conservative-laden world at this time, so needless to say, kind of a song that goes after the government in a way for always kind of taking that conservative rhetoric, being prepared for war, and also, I should mention by this time, the Gulf War was going on, so that also should tie it in as well. With that being said though, Don't Tread on Me could be taken in a way as kind of a patriotic song in an odd way, so if you shit the red, white, and blue stars and stripes, this might not be a bad song for you at the end of the day. Another thrash-laden track on this album, other than Holier Than Thou, is Through the Never. Another song proving that when Metallica want to go fast, they can still fucking go fast. Absolutely blistering pace guitar with the drums following right in behind it. This song is a can't miss. I absolutely love this thing. This thing makes me headbang every single fucking time. It's so cool. Even when you listen to them play it live, it's so awesome the way it comes off. They don't miss a beat with this song. It's all there. The intensity, the thrash, the feeling of unstoppable force, the complexity of And Justice for All, the anger and malice of Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, and Master of Puppets. It's all right there. Even in Holier Than Thou, it's there to an extent, but because it's so quick, it's blink and you miss it kind of style. This one's here for a little bit longer, clocking in at about a good 4-minute span. But still, at the end of the day, though, fucking awesome track. Have to listen to it. Do not press the skip button. Okay, here we go. Number 8. Alright. Nothing Else Matters. The ballad of Metallica. The one that everybody knows. And about 99.9% of the loyal fan base of Metallica up to that point absolutely fucking despised. When Nothing Else Matters hit, that's when the world knew this was not the same Metallica that had entered in and made And Justice for All or Master of Puppets. This was a different Metallica by every stretch of the imagination. Kind of taking the side of James, speaking about his inner self and going through the time period of being away from his loved ones, as he was at this point having a family. James was on the road a lot and kind of feeling that pain. This song kind of touches base on that, but at the same time also coming to grips with how you live life the way you want to live life. That's kind of how Nothing Else Matters works. It's a song that stirred up a hell of a lot of controversy for its time, where at this point it started attracting a much more mainstream audience, and to many of a testosterone-fueled, hot-blooded American male, probably pissed them off because then ladies started liking Metallica. Now, by no means is that a bad thing. I absolutely welcome women loving heavy metal, but back then, oddly enough, this was actually a big fucking deal for most guys who were into Metallica. To them, the idea of a lady ballad kind of being in a Metallica song was a massive sellout for them. So I can't really say that they like it, but I actually like the song. I think it's a cool song, and it shows a hell of a lot of depth and ability to the band, considering the fact that most bands at that time were not showing that kind of ability or that kind of intricacy or that kind of depth at the end of the day. Either way, though, I'm sure there are people out there who hate this, but I like it, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of you that like it. So listen to Nothing Else Matters, come to your own conclusion. For me, I like it, you may hate it. So now that the ballad's out of the way, and I'm sure there's plenty of comments that'll be coming down, or I'm sure there's a lynch mob outside waiting to hang me from the nearest tree for saying that I like Nothing Else Matters from the hardcore heavy metal fan base, but we take a break from all of that to go to number 9, Of Wolf and Man. Leaving the ballad aside, this is where they get right back to the heaviness, not stopping for any quick second, starting it off with a quick note from the guitar riff and then a smashing of the drums. Of Wolf and Man is another one of those relentless tracks that you'll find on the Black Album that to me is another one of those songs that screams filler, but it's not bad. It's pretty damn solid. For a song that's not supposed to be taken that importantly, it actually wound up being a pretty solid track at the end of the day. So I say listen to it, especially if you love horror themed stuff. It's the most horror themed you're going to get here. Number 10. Alright, so this is where we're getting into the home stretch, and like I said, this is where the filler territory kind of comes in. But I will say this, I absolutely love this song. It actually fights with probably my favorite song on the entire album, and it's supposed to be filler. But the reason why I love it so much is because being a shitty bass player myself, listening to good bass playing is something that absolutely attracts you to a song in 5 seconds. And Jason's opening here is fucking awesome. kicking in with a dark, ominous tone. The God That Failed kicks in and immediately grips you by the belt buckle, saying, do not fucking go anywhere, because there's plenty more left on this album. Don't skip it. And I suggest you don't. Especially if you're kind of anti-religious, this is the perfect song for you. A song that's basically talking about how religion failed at the end of the day. Yeah! That's something that I'm pretty sure many people can agree upon, especially in the heavy metal kingdom. Either way though, The God That Failed, check it out. You'll love it if you hate religion. Number 11. Now, if you like bass playing, you'll love this one as well. Jason enters this one this time as well, and let's just say that it's a lot more intricate. One thing I don't think Jason Newsted gets enough credit, at least not by all the Metallica fans, is just how talented he actually was. Even though he was there for the height of Metallica, so many people, especially those new kids on the block who like to join up and say, oh, we're huge fucking Metallica fans. Cliff Burton's the fucking man. Like, Cliff was great at the thrash stuff. But if you slow it down and you slow the pace, listen to what Jason does. And you'll realize, holy shit, Jason's fucking amazing at what he can do on the bass. This is a perfect example of that with My Friend of Misery. A song that begins with a bass line that truly makes you feel that sense of dread with the song rolling on in. When the riff kicks in, you're like, okay, where's this going? Not only does it lead to a song with a deep, dark message, it also leads to probably one of the best solos on the entire album. Kirk Hammett puts a fucking wail on the guitar that you will never forget. If you love Dimebag Darrell wails, you will love the Kirk Hammett one here on this solo. Killer fucking song. Definitely don't miss it. A song they played live on multiple occasions during the tour for the Black Album. Finishing off the album is probably the weakest song on the entire album. But that's not saying a bad thing about it, because when you have a strong album like this, being the weakest song is actually probably the best song on most heavy metal releases, at least when it comes to shitty bands, let me tell you. That is The Struggle Within, a song that, well, pretty much speaks its message for itself. But The Struggle Within, at the end of the day, is a song that's so cool because it begins with a military drum beat that then kicks in high gear with a guitar riff, pushing you forward with the verse and finishing it up very, very strong with Struggle Within. All I could say is, this album, no matter what you think about it, had strong track upon strong track, or kick-ass track upon kick-ass track, and anthem upon anthem. Whether you love it or you hate it, you cannot deny this album packs a fucking punch. And it's the best-selling metal album of all time, so I think it does deserve its respect. Even from those who absolutely couldn't stand this fucker when it came out back in the day, you have to give it its due nowadays after so long and so many years have passed. And comparing it to what Metallica would eventually become with Load and Reload, I think we could safely say this one doesn't insult you nearly as much as what the future releases will do. With that being said, that finishes up the Black Album. My recommendation, this one goes into the Pantheon. It has to. It belongs in the Hall of Fame of metal albums, as well as just music in general. And I think it deserves to be the first member of our music Pantheon. Well, that'll do it for this time around. I'm Matt. You can catch me here at the first 117. You can also catch Andre, who's flipping me the bird right now off camera. Gio, who's doing something that we will not say here on the air. He's somewhere in the studio, hopefully in a corner, taking care of business. But anyway, with that being said, though, you can catch me on a2dradio.com, where I do Hockey Happy Hour for hockey and Flyers related news on Thursdays at 10 or at 8 with our new time slot for a temporary period in July. And also Lazy Booking right beforehand at 7:30s, talking about wrestling and everything to do with pro wrestling. And you can also catch me right here at the first 117, talking wrestling, music, and anything else that comes to our mind. But that'll do it for this edition of the Music Pantheon. I'll see you guys next time.